UNITAR's work to strengthen multilateral diplomacy, training, and research is more important than ever.
With a mission to provide knowledge and develop capacities for diplomats and top minds shaping the world, the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, UNITAR, was established 60 years ago.
I should like first to extend to each of you a very warm welcome to this first meeting of the United Nations Institute for Training and Research.
We are celebrating 6 decades of dedication, innovation and impact, playing a transformational role in all 193 UN member states, with a reach to close to 400,000 learners and change makers annually.
Over the decades, UNITAR has evolved with time, adapting its mission, programs and organizational structure to meet evolving global challenges. And today, UNITAR's 4-year strategic framework is closely aligned with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
The knowledge that UNITAR had acquired over the last 6 years of experiences and actual specific case studies of real cases, real issues that were handled in the Security Council and which was used as part of our training was very important for us.
My experience with UNITAR all began when I was a participant to one of its training programs. UNITAR changed my life. It unlocked my potential. It made me achieve the dream that I had of working one day in the United Nations.
Today, we stand as a globally recognized institution enabling positive change across the spectrum of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. This is only possible thanks to the support of like-minded partners.
We believe it's important to support UNITAR because UNITAR is an organization to develop people and disseminate knowledge, information and solutions. And we consider that the partnership with UNITAR is critical to make positive changes to the world.
With our offices in Geneva, New York, Hiroshima and Bonn, and a global network of affiliated training centers all over the world, our impact extends far and wide.
UNITAR does a great job bringing experience and knowledge about basic issues to diplomats. This allows diplomats then to negotiate more successfully. Diplomacy is about talking, but it's even more about listening. I see another important role from UNITAR, training the diplomats not just to talk and bring their positions, but also to listen to each other.
On the 60th anniversary of UNITAR, it gives me great satisfaction that we reach close to 500,000 learners, mostly in the developing world every year. In the partnerships we have forged, we hope we'll be able to deepen the quality of our learning for many more beneficiaries in the future.
So join us as we look onto the next 60 years to continue to empower individuals with new skills and knowledge to lead and shape a better world.
Thank you, UNITAR.
Thank you, UNITAR.
Thank you, UNITAR.
For 60 years.
For 60 years.
For 60 years.
Of enabling positive change.
Positive change.
Of enabling positive change.
It's very easy, I think, in the day-to-day to forget just how small we are compared to everything that's going on. That's really humbling, hearing from Ella, Danielle and Habiba and everybody that's contributed to CIDT's success in the various guises. And as we prepare for the next 50 years, I think it's been quite incredible. It's easy to overlook just every project. It's when you hear it all together, all the stories, the golden threads that go through that, and just how proud we should be of that. And that's why we wanted to make sure we pulled today together. And we're absolutely delighted with the support of colleagues, particularly Vijay Prashant, the Vice-Chancellor. We were able to attract and invite such a distinguished guest to join us today. And I'm going to just do a small introduction, although watching that, I'm not quite sure I could ever do it justice. But we're absolutely delighted you're here. Thank you so much. So just a few words, and thank you, Vijay, for preparing this for me. That's really kind of you. So, Mr. Nikhil Seth joined UNITAR as its Executive Director on the 1st of October 2015. During his term, UNITAR has grown significantly, as you saw, and the number of beneficiaries of its services and its work has been aligned to the pillars of the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. The focus of its work has shifted to benefit the most distressed countries, especially in Africa. Before assuming the post of the UNITAR Executive Director, Nikhil Seth was the Director of the Division for Sustainable Development Department of Economic and Social Affairs, DESA, at the United Nations Secretariat in New York. We really are going around the globe today. In his role, he served as head of the Rio 20 Secretariat and of the developing states, spearheading the preparations for the conferences in Rio, Brazil, and Samoa. He was also closely engaged in coordinating and advancing their follow-up. Mr. Seth's division was also responsible for supporting the intergovernmental negotiations for the post-2015 development agenda, which was adopted at the United Nations Sustainable Development Summit in 2015. Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals continue to be a significant blueprint for humanity, for peace, for progress and sustainable development, as we were talking about over lunch, and something you take great pride in, and so do we. In the United Nations, Mr. Seth served as the Director for ECOSEC, Secretary of the Economic and Financial Committee, Secretary of ECOSEC, and with the USG of DESA. He was closely involved with many of the summits and conferences of the 1990s as a delegate from India and as part of the support secretariat. From 1980 to 1993, he was a member of the Indian Foreign Service and served in Geneva and the Democratic Republic of Congo. He has a master's in economics and taught at St. Stephen's College at Delhi University before joining the diplomatic service. So the depth of your knowledge and experience just speaks for itself. And you're going to tell us a little bit more about that work in your own words. So please, could I ask you to join me in welcoming Nikhil to the stage?
Well, thank you for that rather generous introduction. And I must start by saying how happy I am to be with all of you in this wonderful university and to see the alignment of the work, at least CIDT, with the United Nations and all these decades and the history that has been captured in the beautiful description of the years that have gone by. I lived through many of those decades of development and so on, and it really touches me to see how the UN does influence the lives in so many sectors all over the world. And to see academia particularly being inspired by the work we do in the United Nations gives me such deep satisfaction. I've had a very generous introduction, but I want to summarize it a little of my work in the United Nations, just to draw out for your attention the difference between the first part of my world in the United Nations, which was in the world of words, in wordsmithing consensus amongst 193 not very like-minded countries. And the challenge of forging a consensus is never very easy. Now what I'm doing is trying to make these words and promises a reality in the lives of ordinary people. In the lives of ordinary people, particularly in the most distressed parts of the world. And that's very tough, because listening to the description of this 50-year-old organization in this university, and when I compare it to the 60-year-old organization that I head now, apart from the acronyms which are not similar at all, the work is very similar. It's just the amplitude and the scale of what we do in UNITAR which is very different. And the fact that we can bring the beautiful words that we adopt in the United Nations into the humble, simple lives of people around the world is the aspect of my work today which gives me the very deepest satisfaction. You saw the video about UNITAR, and that focuses a lot on the diplomatic training side of UNITAR. Yes, we were established in the years of African decolonization, when just in the years 1960 to 63, we had 26 newly independent countries in Africa, countries without diplomatic services, countries without diplomatic training institutes. So our original leitmotif was around diplomatic training, but now we've morphed into a much larger institutions. And since I've come there, I was personally very deeply involved in the creation of the SDGs, I restructured the organization to focus on the 5 pillars which we defined in the SDG process: peace, planet, people, prosperity through partnerships. And that is the structure of UNITAR. So we do a lot. We do a lot in the area of planet, for example, on e-waste management, on chemicals and waste management, on plastics management. What do? We go to poor countries to help them in their struggles fighting environmental degradation, fighting pollution, contributing to mitigation of the climate situation, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, achieving the SDGs. But we do a lot in the area of peace. We work with our peacekeepers in the different missions that they are deployed to be able to help them transition from being national army men or infantry people to work in a very different alien environment where they are peacekeepers. We work with their police. They're not policing in the within the national borders. They are policing to keep conflicting parties away from each other, which is a very different context. Similarly, in the areas of people, of decentralized training, of interfacing with academia, in the area of prosperity, where we are working on so many things, including corruption, illicit flows of finance, and so the diversity of the things we do. The other day I was counting the number of offers we have, especially in these most distressed countries. And half of the membership of the United Nations is extremely distressed. They come under the categories of countries in special situations, which is UNEs for the most distressed countries. If we can't work there, if we can't achieve anything there, where can we achieve it? That's always been UNITAR's guiding motto, that work to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals for those who are furthest behind. Countries in conflict, countries emerging from conflict, countries in Africa, the landlocked countries, the least developed countries, work with them to bring SDGs into the lives of the people who live there. It's not easy. Wordsmithing was much easier. Forging consensus among these 993 cats and bringing them together was far, far easier, because our mission is very similar with CIDT. What we're hoping to do is, through adult learning, helping behavioral change, whether it is of institutions, whether it's organizational change, or whether it's individual behaviors and attitudes. And that seems to be the most difficult task of all. Getting adults to change their attitudes and behaviors and work as good global citizens for a better world and adopt new things they learn in all these things that I talked about, in peace, on planet, on people, on prosperity and partnerships, is probably the toughest responsibility any institution can have. We do reach 500,000 people a year, but what's the impact of that? Is 500,000 enough? And what I advise my own colleagues in UNITAR is partnerships is the way to go. You can't do it alone. You can't reach 3-4 billion people by yourself. But what you do, you've got to spread the word, partner with universities, partner with the private sector, partner with civil society, and of course with the UN system and governments to help induce that change through the penny dropping. Unless the penny drops in people's minds, they don't see why they should do anything differently on production, on consumption, on so many facets of our lives which have such a severe impact our attitudes towards women, our attitudes towards social integration, our attitudes for the poor in our society, our attitudes to the people who are most disadvantaged. How do we change all that is our mission too. And I'm so happy that much of your mission, of course you can't do 370 offers of the type we do in partnership with so many universities, but partnerships are very rewarding. You know, when you start this whole effort of forging partnerships, you do it with some trepidation. You say, is it competition I'm building up? What am I doing? Why am I building up this? How can I get different parts of my university to be together and do this together? And there's so many doubts that come to your mind. But I can tell you from my own experience, there's nothing as rewarding as partnerships, and nothing which yields higher dividends than these partnerships. I've got a little diverted from this long speech that I have written here, but I wanted to express my deep congratulations to CIDT, because I see from what they've done over these years, the similarity with what we are doing, the alignment, because after all, when the UN forges a consensus, it reflects the collective will of the entire human race in a sense, because these are not articulated by governments alone. The SDG summit, for example, we brought together civil society, we brought together academia, we brought together private sector, and we brought together governments of all sorts of political views, from extreme communists to extreme right-wing. Everyone was part of this consensus. And there was applause in every part of the room when we adopted this consensus. So this is how we need to approach implementation of the SDGs and the spirit of partnerships. Of course, when we were adopting the SDGs, we were navigating all those agreements. Many people said, this is an over-ambitious agenda. How are you going to have gender equality by 2030? How are you going to have education for all by 2030? How are you going to eradicate poverty by 2030? Are you going to have sustainable agriculture, sustainable infrastructure, sustainable oceans? Are you going to achieve all that by 2030? But we all said, look, in ambition, let's err on this side of over-ambition. What is the point of setting low goals and low standards? And that's how the governments got together and established such a dramatically different agenda in the United Nations, with these bold goals, these bold targets, these bold indicators, in the hope that these would be what would guide humanity to a better world for all. But where are we today on these SDGs? On social inclusion, equality, sustainable development, climate change, poverty, hunger, education. Where are we today? And just this morning, I heard the Secretary General introducing the 2024 SDG report, the report card of the United Nations on the SDGs. Now this report is put together by a bunch of statisticians. 50 entities of the United Nations put this report together. And Secretary General started by saying, this is a failing report card. What we are seeing in terms of SDG achievement is the most dismal, and the word he used was outrageous report card on the state of our world today. He said that the lessons I have for you after reading this report card is, first, no peace, no sustainable development goals. Our world is rocked with conflict never seen before after World War II. And what we're seeing today is a world riven by conflict. No peace, no sustainable development. Simple message. Second, no climate change action, and we don't know where our world will be in the next decade. We need dramatic, scaled up climate action. And as report after report has been telling us, reducing greenhouse gases, adapting to climate change are no simple act. These require societal changes, behavioral changes of a depth and magnitude which we are not even bothering to conceptualize today. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, a bunch of 4,000 scientists from all over the world are saying, this is how you've got to do climate change. It's got to change everything in lives that we need, in the way we organize societies, in the way we finance our activities, in the cars we buy, the fuels we use, in everything. So are we anywhere in the world close to this kind of societal change? The report says no. And the third area he highlighted was finance for Sustainable Development Goals achievement. He proposed at last year's Summit on Sustainable Development a stimulus package, but he's saying we are nowhere close to that stimulus package. Only 17% of the targets are on track. 33% are either stalled or have regressed, and 50% are minimal or have seen moderate progress. This he called outrageous, and this is the report card I have to share with you today, because it is really a sorry state of where we are in our world today. There are some good news also, he mentioned. Girls in most regions have achieved parity in education, in fact exceeded the number of boys globally in many regions. HIV deaths have declined because of the package of medicines that are now available. He said 21 million lives have been saved because of the availability of these new drugs. The malaria vaccine is proving to have great potential. And the digital divide, he also mentioned, has come down gradually. And 2/3 of our global population have access now to the internet. He's saying we have to move further, faster, we have to silence our guns, we have to help the displaced. 140 million people have got displaced. The maximum number of women and children in conflict have died in 2023. We need a green transition. We need greater digital connectivity. We need progress in finance. And we need to reform the global financial architecture. So this is a summary of the long report that was given on the SDGs. This is just to push you into moving on the work that you're doing with greater determination, because the world is desperate for the kind of help that you can contribute. My original title of what I was supposed to speak to you all today was on reimagining multilateralism, why academia and research matters. And I wanted to delve today into your respective roles as researchers, academics, and your role in contributing with the multilateral system for achieving the world we dream about, the world we really want. I have talked about the SDGs itself, but I want to talk a little about the state of multilateralism and how that's being impacted by the rise of nationalism and war-generated hysteria, which has led to a great trust deficit or erosion in multilateral institutions and weakened international cooperation. We've seen how country after country has been shrinking their development cooperation budgets, and the difficulties in funding the kind of activities that voluntary organizations like mine and yours have been doing over the years, and the difficulty in getting money behind, the necessary money behind the activities we need to do. The emergence of new technologies and the rapid pace of innovation have created new global challenges which require novel multilateral approaches. But the spirit of cooperation, the spirit of solidarity is disappearing very fast from our world. In the United Nations, it all starts with the Security Council. And we all know the political fault lines, Russia, China versus the rest, and how that kind of fault line is disrupting multilateralism in general. Because if there's no confidence in the apex political body of the United Nations, the Security Council, the confidence in everything which draws its inspiration, in a sense, from the Security Council is also bound to disappear. So this is taking a heavy toll in our understanding of multilateralism. But I keep thinking that multilateralism today, even if we have a paralyzed Security Council, is morphing. It's no longer the multilateralism only of government sitting in the United Nations. It's the multilateralism of the type we heard about today, and the multilateralism of academia, the multilateralism of civil society, the multilateralism of enlightened business. These are the different kinds of multilateralism today that are powering the expression multilateralism. Governments may not agree, they may not want to sit together because they feel that they'd rather shoot than talk. But everyone else wants to talk. Everyone else wants cooperation. Everyone else realizes that you can't solve these problems, which are transboundary in nature, problems which don't require passports. You need to solve them by sitting together. And that realization is very much a part of academia today. I go from country to country, meeting people in universities, and the sense of enlightenment that you have in Wolverhampton is not confined to Wolverhampton. I saw it in China recently when I went to Tsinghua University and Peking University. I saw it in Japan. I went to Sofia University and Tokyo University. I see it in Europe, in Geneva University. And there's a spirit that says that, look, why can't we all together have the same content on teaching the SDGs? Why can't we inspire our researchers to focus more on human problems and human solutions to human problems in an integrated way? That was the basic message of the SDG, that our fears, our dreams, our aspirations are all intertwined. You can't put them in silos. Your dreams for your children's education, for your health, they are enmeshed also with your fears on environment, on pollution, on so many other things. So how do you have a more interdisciplinary approach to research? And how do you focus more on research which is driven by, in a sense, the SDGs of finding solutions to human problems? When you look at the whole body of research globally, and I don't have the figures with me, but I'm confident that if you look at the amount of technology research that's going on in the trillion-dollar companies, in defense establishments, this is far larger than any research that's going on clean water, on energy, on anything else that we might think important for human survival. So how do we get research to move in these directions? Multidisciplinarity, focus on human problems, break the silos that exist in academia between different faculties of social sciences, humanities, of engineering, of physics, of pure physics. How do you move from purely curiosity-driven research to research which has that orientation of solving the most pressing problems of our contemporary world? So these are things that I think you as academic institutions all need to think of, and especially on the issues of climate change. Finally, what I want to also mention, because many of you are focusing on research, and SDG acceleration is something that you're all focusing on, but over the next couple of years, at least the United Nations, through summit-level meetings, and summit-level meetings because they attract presidents, prime ministers, kings and queens. They get whole national paraphernalia working over consciousness around these issues. And this year, of course, we will have this Pact of the Future, a summit looking at what's happening in the future. And that has been focusing on sustainable development and financing for development. on international peace and security, and creating a new agenda for peace, on science, technology and innovation, on digital cooperation, on youth and future generations, and transforming global governance, whether it's the United Nations or the financial architecture. Next year, there will be a similar high-level summit on social development, on looking at issues like social integration, full employment, poverty eradication. And next year, there will also be a summit around financing for sustainable development. So these are issues which, if you are to live and think of research in a futuristic way, it will be well for you to look at the outcomes of at least the Summit of the Future to see how the kinds of research that I'm mentioning for accelerating SDG achievement, for improving the lives of common people in the most distressed countries is something that you can all focus on. Let me conclude with the following thought. Societies are deeply divided today across the globe. And it is difficult sometimes when you look at these kinds of issues that I'm mentioning. How will we reach a societal consensus? UK is going into an election, and that's when many of these issues come to the fore. How do you build societal consensus? Despite the political lefts and rights and centers, there is a desire in all of us, in all human beings, no matter what geographic territory we occupy, to meet simple hopes and desires and fears. Now we are worrying about decarbonizing our economies, to changing our high consumption lifestyles in all countries, and how to redistribute wealth, income and opportunities for the benefit of those people who have been until now left behind. But we have also to realize that our own survival as a human race depends on making these fundamental shifts. You have to be the thought leaders in reminding humanity again and again that unless you make these shifts, we are committing collective suicide. We need to come together in a spirit of caring, compassion, to realize our dreams for this future that we all want. Thank you very much. That finishes my formal part of the thing, but I did want to have interaction with you because I think what's on your minds and what are you thinking about, and my ability to give you a kind of feel in the United Nations of the kinds of issues that you're grappling with would be very useful. So I wonder if there are any questions from the floor.